Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome. I'm Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections, and your host for this episode of the Networking RX podcast. Quickly, on the heels of last week's episode, Networking Small Talk, which was episode 11 to be precise, I wanted to share, or more appropriately, thank those who've shared with me their favorite small talk icebreaker questions. Some of those are very useful. Some are rather creative, and a few I'll never repeat, certainly not on this podcast. But please keep them coming. If we get enough, we can devote an entire episode to them. Also quickly, AmSpirit Business Connections has a unique franchise opportunity that involves helping small business professionals become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for an attorney, accountant, realtor, business coach, or consultant to add on to what they're already doing and get better networked at the same time. Why just be in a business network when you can own the business network? If you or someone you know would like to learn more, please contact me using the email at the end of this podcast, or I've inserted an email into the show notes as well. Okay, on to the meat of the episode. If you think about it, creating, growing, and maintaining a strong, productive network is analogous to building a business. To get people, the right people, to associate with you, you need to instill in others a trust that you can fill their perceived need that they might have. So your network is truly just a business, and that's true whether you're self-employed, gainfully employed, or aspiring to either. As such, an important part of growing and maintaining any business network or any business is marketing it. And the same is true for your network. There needs to be some marketing effort to build it. So how do you market this intangible thing we call our network? How do you attract new participants to your network? And equally important, how do you keep the current individuals in your network active within it? Well, several years ago, I read a book entitled Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. Now, as background, Beckwith's expertise is in attracting and retaining clients. He heads up a Minneapolis-based firm, Beckwith Partners, which consults with Fortune 500 companies like IBM, Target, Wells Fargo, and various other companies on aspects of their client services and client retention. He's also the author of a handful of international bestsellers, all focused on marketing and client services, including You Inc., The Art of Selling Yourself, The Invisible Touch, The 4 Keys to Modern Marketing, and What Clients Love, A Field Guide to Growing Your Business, and of course, Selling the Invisible, A Field Guide to Modern Marketing, which happened to spend 36 months on the Business Week bestseller list. And that's impressive, as that was in the pre-Amazon days and the heydays of traditional booksellers. Nevertheless, in the book Selling the Invisible, Beckwith had some sage advice for marketing services. And again, which that would include your network. And the first step to marketing any service, he put in there, the first step to marketing any service is to fix it. In other words, it makes little sense to promote something unless it's operating effectively. Duh, right? Well, the same would hold true for your network. Attempting to promote participation in your network is counterproductive if in fact you're not networking effectively. I know, I can hear the outcries as everyone chimes in. Now wait a minute, Frank. Don't you dare imply that my networking abilities are somehow substandard. Relax. I don't intend to offend anybody, but take a moment and consider this. Over the years, psychologists have demonstrated that as humans, we tend to have an overinflated opinion of ourselves. For example, various studies I was able to pull up have revealed that 60% of students rate themselves in the top 10% of their class. Obviously, that's not possible. 90% of college professors consider themselves above average educators, and 100% of mothers think that their kids are the best. Okay, I made the last one up, but you get the point. Humans tend to have an overinflated opinion of themselves, and it's not limited to college campuses. It applies to drivers, writers, attorneys, mechanics, and the list goes on. Here's the reality. If you're listening to this, you're guilty of this. Now, don't despair. It's a natural human tendency to give ourselves too much credit, even if just a wee little bit. Given that we tend to overrate ourselves, it's not too much of a stretch to conclude that perhaps, just maybe, our networking competence, your networking competence, my networking competence is not as polished as we might think. Listen, I can accept that for myself. So let's draw a parallel from Beckwith's advice, which again is the first step to marketing any service is to fix it. So the solution to improving your ability to network is to focus on every aspect of the process in an effort to uncover shortcomings. Then once you've uncovered shortcomings, you can focus on correcting them. This process is strikingly similar to something called total quality management, easy for me to say, or TQM. What is total quality management? As a brief history primer, total quality management came into use by a number of Japanese firms in the 1950s and 1960s. However, it was built largely on the techniques of two Americans who had quietly developed the principles in the aftermath of the Second World War. In the 1970s and the 1980s, however, much of the developed world suffered economically in the face of stiff competition from the Japanese because they had the ability to produce high-quality goods at competitive costs. Again, one of the things they were using was this total quality management. Nevertheless, as a response, American companies began re-examining the techniques of quality control that were invented over the last 50 years and how those techniques had been used so successfully by the Japanese. In that re-examination, corporate America and much of the rest of the developed world rediscovered total quality management, or TQM. In the most general terms, total quality management is the continual process by everyone in a particular organization to both detect as well as reduce or completely eliminate errors in the manufacturing process, or perhaps streamlining supply chain management or improving the customer service experience. As an example, an insurance company might examine how it processes homeowners policies. In so doing, it might determine that the third part of its triplicate policy form had limited use. With this knowledge, the company might alter how it processed policies. This would in turn allow it to eliminate that third part of the form, the third part of the triplicate form. In addition, the company might be able to eliminate some duplicative efforts in their process. The end result, however it manifested itself, the end result would be cost savings and quicker policy processing. So total quality management has proven to be very effective, a very effective process for improving business functioning, certainly with the Japanese, the Americans, and the rest of the developing world. Its application, however, wasn't limited to corporate America. TQM is also used in government, the military, education, and various not-for-profit organizations. In short, the principles of TQM can be applied to really any process for the purpose of discovering and reducing any sort of defects. While today TQM, Total Quality Management, has been largely supplanted by things such as ISO 9000's collection of standards, Six Sigma, as well as lean manufacturing, the concept behind it continues to have applications to really any business, even the daily business of growing and developing your network. I know what you're thinking. How could an outdated process improvement strategy of the greasy, grimy manufacturing world have applications to a domain centered on smiles, handshakes, and small talk? To be honest, I wondered the same thing. It seemed like, I guess, quite a stretch. In reality, it's not my idea. Rather, it comes from the mind of Ben Franklin. You might have heard of him. A penny saved is a penny earned. Flew a kite in a thunderstorm. One of the founding fathers of the United States. Yes, that Ben Franklin. At any rate, Ben Franklin applied a form of TQM as a means to improve interpersonal skills. Then a couple hundred years later, University of Chicago professor Harry Roberts and an AT&T VP, Bernie Sergesker, I apologize, I probably butchered that name. At any rate, these two perfected the idea of personal TQM using modern concepts and tools. This was all laid out in their book, Quality is Personal, A Foundation for Total Quality Management. Then Professor Wayne Baker from the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business took this notion of personal TQM one step further in his book, Achieving Success Through Social Capital. In his book, Baker claimed that we can use the concepts of personal total quality management to manage the process of building and using networks. Well, the notion behind Franklin's personal TQM, as perfected by Roberts and Sergetter, is you create a checklist that tracks personal quality defects. For these purposes, a defect is simply a failure or lapse in our personal behavior. In other words, a defect is doing something we should not do, such as swearing, or not doing something we should have, such as washing our hands after we go to the restroom. In achieving success through social capital, Baker extended the line of thinking and creating a personal quality checklist to networking. On the left side of the page, vertically, lists down the page are networking defects. Along the top of the page, horizontally, listed across the page are units of time, perhaps days or weeks or months. So the starting point in developing a checklist is identifying the list of potential personal networking defects. Some examples could include not being timely in pursuing a referral opportunity, not thanking someone for a referral or an introduction or information they've given you, not introducing two individuals you're engaged in group conversation with, not offering a business card or failing to carry business cards altogether, not promptly returning a telephone call or email, not actively listening when engaged in conversation. Obviously, the list of potential personal networking defects is not going to be endless, but it's certainly going to be voluminous, as you can see. But here's the deal. Even though you can identify lots and lots of potential networking defects, you don't need to focus on them all at the same time. Start with a select handful of defects, those 3 or 4 most vital to you and your networking success. You can even just start with one. Whatever the number of networking defects you settle on, take a sheet of paper, work up a spreadsheet, or jerry-rig something on your phone, depending upon what century you best associate with and want to work in, right? At any rate, create a checklist of sort and insert the networking defects you want to monitor into it. Again, you don't have to tackle every conceivable networking defect out of the gate. Those you don't work on today, this week, this month, you can reserve for a future checklist. Once you have your checklist populated with potential personal networking defects, the actual recording of the data is relatively easy. You simply make a check mark in the appropriate checklist grid. For example, if during 1 week of a particular month you failed to thank someone for an introduction they made, you would simply put a check mark in the box where the vertical column of week 1 intersects with the row failure to thank someone. Of course, you need to be honest with tallying defects. After all, cheating hurts no one but you. With that in mind, you should mark down every minor failure. Be tough on yourself. It'll make it easier for you in the long run. At any rate, keep after tallying failures and defects. Do it for several weeks. Give yourself a reasonable number of data points. With that, you can gain a sense as to what areas you need to improve upon. But once armed with this information, you might find that you can take corrective action with respect to your defects or failures. For example, after several weeks, you might determine that you're having trouble getting around to thanking people for referrals, introductions, information, or whatever they're providing. Knowing this, and you have to obviously be committed to getting better, you can decide to invest in some inexpensive thank you cards to help saying thank you more effective. Obviously, the networking TQM tool that Baker envisioned is helpful because it would allow you to spot problem areas relative to your networking. Once you've uncovered problem areas, you can then set about taking corrective actions, which is very beneficial, as we've talked about. If you think about it, the ability to take corrective action, however, is not the main advantage of networking TQM. The main potential advantage is that it would serve to actually change your behavior. Why? How? That's because just knowing that you're tracking certain aspects of your networking behavior will have a positive effect on your performance. In other words, simply knowing that you're giving yourself demerits for not thanking someone, if you follow my previous example, will serve to ensure that you do thank people. Again, think about it. Someone calls and they say they were directed to you by a referral partner and they want to retain you to do whatever you do. Of course, you're going to put your best foot forward to serve this new prospective client, but knowing that if you don't thank your referral partner, if you don't thank them, it'll result in an unwanted black mark on your networking TQM checklist. You're going to make a pretty bold mental note, and perhaps a physical one too. Nevertheless, reminding yourself to get a thank you note out at the first opportunity. Of course, with the networking TQM, there doesn't ever have to be an end to the improvement process. Once you've conquered those initial potential personal networking defects, you can move on to others you have, and one by one pick away at your networking problem areas. And maybe after all of this, you determine that your networking abilities are pretty sound. Whether they are or not is irrelevant. The fact is that they're not perfect, and you can continue to improve upon them. But by focusing on them, you can't help but improve your networking abilities. This in turn can only serve to improve your network, which again is really nothing more than a business.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.